Hello, this is John Maggiore at
Hi, John. This is
MaggioreBowie.com. Hi,
Sarah.
hi, Sarah. It's Sara Captain from
Yes, I.
England. Yeah, I am very excited today to introduce Sara Captain, a
Thank
wonderful,
you.
talented artist whose muse is David Bowie. She paints more than David
Definitely.
Bowie, but she has many beautiful paintings of David Bowie. Sara has been a guest on the blog before in a written interview where I was able to post some of her just amazing works of art. And it has been one of, if not the most popular written interviews that I've posted to date. And I can't
Wow.
tell you, yeah, how much positive feedback I've gotten about the art and
Really?
yeah, right. And the interest that people have had in learning more about your art, more about you. So I could not be more excited to have this opportunity to talk with you today, where we're going to be able to look at some samples, a small sample of your paintings, and we're going to get to hear the stories behind some of them. So thank you,
Thank
Sara.
you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, very excited too. I'm very happy to talk about this. I think there's a lot of funny and interesting stories behind them. And I want to thank the people who gave you feedback on the blog, and I really hope more people discover it because there's a lot of treasures in there. So yeah, so I'm very excited too. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So I'm going to link to that interview on the splash page for this interview, so we don't go over the same ground, because I'm really
No,
excited to get right to the paintings. So
yeah, let's get stuck in.
okay, so I'm going to pull up the first thing I'm going to pull up is a link to your homepage, your web page, where you could see a virtual art gallery of not just paintings of David Bowie, but a lot more. And
Mm.
also, just for anybody that's watching this, if you're interested in purchasing a piece of art, there's a way to do that on the web page.
But I can tell you what was the story behind it. This painting, basically, I have access to a lot of offcuts of wood, and there's a sort of children's art supply store next to me, and so I get a lot of like colors that are cheap and and available, and I use them as a background. So the background of the painting is done in what is called chalk paint. So it's a very porous paint, and it kind of creates that blue background there. And
Yeah.
the image, I have a particular thing for The Man Who Fell to Earth. For me is a very multi-layered and interesting movie where nothing you see is actually easily readable. It's all a metaphor, maybe, for alienation, everything like that. So I find it personally very relatable in many ways. And this painting was an image that I always liked, but I'd seen a very small sketch by Egon Schiele, who is one of my favorite artists of all time, because Sheila, apart from being a painter, is more of a draftsman. And I think of myself more as I like drawing more than I like painting. So for me, the drawing part is the most important. And so I'd seen this little painting of Sheila, and it was just like, two figures and a sort of geometric background. And I kind of, in my mind, isolated this image, which is, I don't know if you'll recognize the scene, but it's from The Man Who Fell to Earth, when he is on the bed with Candy Clark takes him on the bed after he's been got sick in the lift. I don't know
Right.
if you remember the
Oh
scene.
yeah.
And
I
and
happened to
I
watch the movie recently, so it's fresh in my mind.
right, yeah. So it's that movie, but that image. But for me, it shows something more universal, which is when we have um exerted ourselves in any endeavor, which may be just a day's work, or producing a great album like Bowie, or a work of art, or yeah, something great of value. Sometimes we are devoid of energy and we just like lie down like that, and we want to be away from the world, and we want to, you know, just basically be with ourselves, or we're lost, you know, a little bit. And so in this for me, apart from being an image of Bowie, is something that we all can connect with. So for me, when I paint David, it's him, and it's quintessentially him, some people say, but it's also every one of us for me.
Yeah.
So painting has to encapsulate something that we recognize about our shared humanity, common humanity. So we could recognize ourselves in that feeling of wanting the world a little bit away from us, and, you know, knowing that maybe we've done something good or great, and but you know, maybe we need a bit of time off. And you know, Tommy in The Man Who Fell to Earth is, you know, a little bit better than some of his of the terrestrians, let's say. So maybe, you know, he's purer in some ways, and so he does not relate to feelings of jealousy or anger, even when people are a bit nasty to him. So so I think this is what it is, this painting.
Yeah.
And
Let me,
the rest, the room becomes a sort of a graphic element more than anything else, a balance of
yeah, I wanted to ask you
lines.
about the room. The face, that the head is almost photorealistic.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
unmistakably David Bowie, and from a distance, it might look like a photograph.
Mm.
But the further you go down his body, the more it sort of blends into the background. It sort of merges with the environment, and then the
Yeah.
background itself is almost abstract. If you took
Yes,
Bowie out
yes.
of this, you'd have an almost abstract painting.
Painting.
And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
what are you going for
So,
with that?
well, I'm going for first of all, if you see, there's a white line that goes
Yeah,
across the painting there, and this is like your, let's say, your inner space, or your kind of I have that in other paintings too. It's like, let's say, a train of thoughts, or maybe a, you know, your inner world, or when your thoughts are kind of going on, you know, their own line, let's say. So that line is his own world and environment in which he's comfortable, and all around. And so he becomes a bit of like part of the painting as a formal element, if you like, you know. So if you see the line that it goes, that goes from the top of his head, and it's
yeah,
like in little steps, and then it goes geometrically all over. So it's basically kind of, his shape is not that important. It's, often in my paintings I select elements that I think are unimportant, or they create maybe an effect more from an aesthetic or graphic point of view, and they have to have an elegance altogether. So I think it's because of that. I didn't want to distract from maybe the idea in this case of, you know, somebody like lying down and being in a place. It doesn't really matter, in other words, the place where he is. That's why the room has been, you know, deleted in a
right.
way. It doesn't really matter. It makes it more universal. The other thing is, it's my confession that Bowie's a bit, I call it, I've said that in other interviews, my artistic playground. So he kind of inspires me to do something, but sometimes I use him, inverted commas, to experiment for other paintings or other things that I'd like to do. So he's like a guiding light for me. He's like a spark. So
Yeah,
I might one day just make an abstract painting. This might turn into a completely abstract painting in which
yeah,
there's no figure, but he starts that off like, oh, this looks good with David, and then maybe it'll evolve and look good on its own. I have other examples of that, you know. I can show you even physically, like one of these behind me, just
yeah.
so that's what it is. So basically it's about selecting the elements that I think are important in it, both from an aesthetic point of view and from a content point of view, for me.
So before we move on from this picture, let me just ask you two last questions about this. How long does it take to between the time you imagine what you want to do and the time that you you declare it's done, it's finished. How long does that
Uh,
take? Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's one answer to that. Each painting is different because there are some that come out in like, I don't know, a day or two, and some others that take months to make.
Yeah.
So I think for this one, because let's say the face would take long because it comes, first of all, you select the image you want, then you sketch it out, then what I do when I study it this way, I take the image and I don't have any sophisticated things other than Microsoft Word. I use Microsoft Word. I might paste the picture in Microsoft Word, and then I change. You can change just a little bit the lighting, the contrast, etc. So I study where the light areas are, the dark areas. I move it, like the contrast or the brightness of it, until what is important to me stands out. And
Yeah.
so let's say, so I know where to place the darkest areas, and normally I use that first. So I use a pencil sketch first.
Yeah.
So, and it depends. Sometimes, I say the muse is with me and you catch it straight away. Say you do a sketch and you catch it. Other times there's no way you can catch it. I have a painting I've been trying to do for months now, and it keeps looking like someone I know instead of Bowie. And so like every time, I don't want to see that person. Just go away. I can even show you this painting, but it's yeah. So if you're lucky and you catch it, because being accurate is one thing, but it doesn't mean that you really catch the expression that he's, the face that he's pulling in that image. So this is kind of, it's, if the muse is with you, you're lucky. So, but because the rest is very simple, this itself, apart from the hair and the face, didn't take that long, because the rest is just like
Yeah.
black, black paint, a black thing. So this one, I think, was done over a period of maybe three weeks, just before this was done for the Dublin Bowie Festival. I think it took,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, about three weeks, from
Yeah.
4 weeks maybe, from the initial thing, because I may change something. First of all, I did it all in blue, and then I thought, no, that's like too boring, and then I added the color of the skin.
Yeah.
That's why the suitcase stayed blue. And so if you see its face, there's some blue behind,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the hair. Yeah, so that was added later. And then I thought, oh, that's quite a good color for the rest. And I didn't plan it this way. It wasn't planned. It was just an accident. It
I
wasn't
noticed.
planned.
I can't help but notice the fingers on the briefcase are turning blue. And I'll tell you, just when I saw this, this is the initial image when you go on your website. And what I wanted to hear your take on it. When I saw it, I was thinking it almost captures the sensation of falling asleep, where you become
Yes.
less aware of your own body. And I noticed my eyes went to the fingers, sort of merging with the environment, and then the legs, where they don't even look like legs. It's like a black hole. And
Yes.
I was just thinking about, my own experience. I'm sure it's yours, everybody's. When you fall asleep, you become less aware of your body and your surroundings.
Yeah.
It just sort of fade into darkness.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, it's called per ardua ad astra. Yes, that's what it's called, per ardua ad astra, which means that you've been through, I said, a hard day's work, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
and then you're kind of exhausted, and you're had enough of the people, had enough of the thing, but you've done a good thing, and you're just like, and you're, like you said, drifting off or drifting away in your own universe, at one with something, a more natural rhythm, or something like that. And I think you captured that very well. What you said, it's actually what it means. Is
Great.
really, I'm very glad, really happy it communicates that, because that's what I meant with it. I remember my boyfriend said, "You are never gonna sell this. He's lying down, looks like he's dead, and I said, no, I think I will." And this one was very, like, it was hotly contested, like, people Actually, I sold it to someone, but someone else wanted it. If I could have sold it to both people, I really would have done. But one, came first, and you have to do that. You have to accept. But I really wish I could have sold it to both people.
It's
Yeah.
it's beautiful. As we're
Thank
talking,
you.
I'm pulling up another one that's influenced by Egon Schiele, and in fact,
Yes.
that's what it's called. And I was interested in more about what you were getting from Schiele that you wanted to play with this series of paintings.
Yeah. So two things about Sheila. The first one is that there is something, for me, Bowie in general is not always a happy thing. I think
Right.
his songs are often not happy, and that's why, in a way, they keep us company, because they can, chime with some of the, some moments of I don't know, strange moments in life where maybe you experience solitude or isolation, or maybe alienation. He was very interested in that kind of thing. So in Sheila's paintings, there's a lot of that as well. The stares of people are rarely to you. They're always kind of blank stares, and a bit kind of almost shocked by maybe the brutality of life and the world, and maybe from the time when Sheila was there. So Sheila's paintings are extremely honest as well. They're extremely unflinching, in my opinion, when it comes to describing the body. And so the hands are always kind of redder, and there's always, it's very muscular and nervy, and so on. So from Sheila, basically what I learned is, when in this painting in particular, you will recognize this kind of similar blank stare
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And it's, Bowie is doing an interview, but I think Bowie was always kind of somewhere else as well. Even in the interviews, he often wrong foots the interviewer, or the interviewer treats him as a regular rock star, and he insists, I'm not a regular rock star, I don't do anything like that, I don't like the rock and roll circuit. And so this is kind of around that I wanted to capture that about him, about Bowie, about being in the interview, but being maybe intellectually even superior to the person interviewing him, mostly, not all, every time, maybe mostly, and his intelligence and things like that. But on the other hand, there's another element, which is, again, to me, something about, it's more to do with the specifics of art and painting as an aesthetic thing. Sheila uses the line as an interesting, as a graphic element, and often his paintings, like there's one particular painting, I think is Edith, where she is wearing a stripy dress, but it's not even finished in some parts. It's just what you need and nothing more. So again, there's a sort of economy there. And not necessarily beauty, not necessarily beauty. So for me, from Sheila, I got something about being a bit looser with the brushstroke, bit more essential. So if you go close to this painting, it's quite rough. The hair is kind of rough. The hand as well is not very finished. The neck, of course, the lines on the shirt are pretty neat, but they're flat. There's no shadows, when in the original image there is. And so it becomes more like, again, like a graphic thing that you can appreciate and enjoy as a black and white, very simple image. Behind, I wanted to reproduce the paper that Sheila worked on, which is a sort of a yellowish natural color paper, sometimes similar to cardboard sometimes. And I used the paint that you use for the walls, the emulsion, in a color called natural Hessian. And I didn't even cover it all, so it looks a bit rough all over. So it's basically, once I wanted it to look like a Sheila sketch rather than a finished painting. And Sheila always, what he taught me when I, as a young girl, I first saw his drawings. I had a book of his drawings. The line itself, it has to be expressive. So it's not one line, it's thicker in some parts. You do it even like, you know, handling the pencil in a very spontaneous way, sideways sometimes. And so the line is what I concentrated on, the hand, etc., even though there's not much of it. But if you go close to saw the painting in real life, you would see that. So this is, of the three, maybe the one that is more Sheila-like. Then there's another two. One is more, he's got a pose that's quite elegant, like a James Bond sort of thing. So then it captures some of that British elegance about him. And yeah, and then there's another one that is even more like blank stare, which, yeah, it's.
So one last question about Sheila. So I'm going to admit something that I was wrong about, but in preparation for this interview, I looked up Sheila, but before I did that, I thought of him as a German expressionist, and I found that he's Austrian, he's not German. But
oh yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing this up at all is Bowie himself was influenced by German expressionism.
Yes.
Some of the images that he created for some of his stages, like in the Diamond Dogs tour, and some of his videos, both painting, but also early German expressionist movies influenced his own style. And
it's all aesthetic. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So that's very true. There's something more. I mean, you can mention also the paintings that he did, like painted portrait of Iggy Pop that was shown at the David Bowie is, and it was influenced by Die Brücke, also his Boy in Berlin. So I did try to, actually, when I prepared this painting, I did try to do to create a style that was more like that, but it was too ugly. You know, I didn't want this to be pretty, but I didn't want it to be as ugly, because so I left that sketch. But Bowie also was earmarked, let's say, for a, or maybe he chose to do a film about Sheila himself, called Wally, which charted the terrible, let's say, the tragic love story between Sheila and his muse, or the woman that it features in many of his paintings, that he eventually did not marry. And it's a very sad story. It doesn't make for good reading if you're a woman. but so I know Bowie was supposed to do this, and unfortunately he did, or fortunately he did, Just a Gigolo, but he never did Sheila. Yeah, so never did Sheila. So I think, yeah, he's so expressionism is basically what I'm getting at here. You know, just a few things, expressive things, and no more.
Yeah.
And an expressive line. That's where I wanted to be.
I'm going to pull up another one that has some similarities and some differences. So I'm going to pull up, it's called All Too Fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So why don't I ask the open-ended question first, and then I'll zoom in. So what are you going for here? And well, let's even start before. What is the medium here? What are we looking at?
Okay, so my medium is very, I mean, I use all kinds of things. I use pencils, oil, but the chief medium that I use is gouache, and it just comes in tubes like this. Yeah, this is like, it's a bit like, let's say, it's watercolor, so it's a water-based paint, but it's thick, it's creamy, and it's very opaque. So the thing that I don't like about oil is not only that it takes ages, and so by the time I finish a painting, I'm in a totally different mood from when I started, and it, you know, I can't stay in that zone for that long.
Yeah.
Whereas with gouache, it's immediate, it dries immediately. You can reactivate it with water, which makes it quite delicate to handle, but it's very spontaneous. So I like it. I like gouache. It's my favorite medium. And so
what
we're
is the painting on? Is it canvas? Is it paper?
It's an MDF board. So it's something like, I'll tell you. It's something like this, like that.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I get them from a carpentry workshop, and they make furniture with that. It's like sometimes I use plywood, but this is a MDF board,
Yeah.
modified
Okay.
particle board. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very good because it's basically like paper, but it's not soft, it's not flexible. And because gouache is water-based, sometimes the paper kind of becomes all wobbly. So, and you don't have paper that size. So I get an offcut of MDF and I think, oh, what can I do with that?
Yeah.
And this was, I wanted to think about the idea of Ziggy happening too fast. Yeah, that line, all too fast. He did it all
Yeah.
too fast. Yeah, so I was thinking of that and the idea of speed, which is something I experienced on a mini micro scale as well when I first started exhibiting my paintings, and then I, sort of from, being in a pub with, some people around and trying to bid on a painting, to being in a kind of very well-known gallery in Paris. So and lots of people coming and signing things, like, oh, on a mini scale I experienced that, and so I can only imagine what Bowie would have gone through. So with the idea of finally making it, or becoming the star that he wanted to be, and what came with that and how he handled that. So what this painting, which is done on this big MDF board and is painted on with just house paint at the back. Yeah, so complete Dulux house paint, and gouache on top and charcoal. This painting is about the speed of fame. It's about fame and what it means and what you might lose or what you might leave behind. And he's thoughtful there. He's thinking, as I imagine, he's thinking, is this such a good idea? Am I going to lose my way, or is it?
Yeah.
What's the price of that? Will I stay? Will I be able to? Is it exactly what I wanted or not? And of course with Bowie that's a big question, because when he hit his pinnacle, then it was all very difficult, both at this time and later on. So that's what it means, is a kind of young man, or a genius maybe, or a talented artist who is thinking about the price of fame and the speed of fame, and it's happening too fast and not even, and it takes its own momentum. I found it takes its own momentum, and it always comes at a very big price. Yeah, so
I'm going to ask you a couple of specific questions about this. I'll start with this, because I find this one of the most fascinating paintings to look at.
Oh,
so
really? That's great.
So I'll tell you, I'll ask you the first question is, so the Thin White Duke makes a lot of black and white, but Ziggy was very colorful. Yet
that's
you
right.
chose to do Ziggy in black and white. So why?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't know. I think the reason is probably, to be absolutely honest, accidental, in the sense that I had a friend of mine called Gail Sheldon gave me a wonderful original 1972-73, and then moves on, but scrapbook that she had. And on this scrapbook there are lots of newspaper clippings. There was a mini image of this this Bowie in this pose, and it was kind of grainy black and white. So I think that little image inspired me, because I'd never seen it before. So I thought, I don't always do that, but I try to go for images that haven't been seen a million times, not the usual like kind of lightning flash type thing. And so I try to find Bowie in an unusual pose, or a weird setting, or maybe a fan photo that hasn't been seen too much. At least I try. Sometimes I try my hand at a better known image, but this one I personally hadn't seen before, and it was just on this mini newspaper clipping. So because it was black and white, I thought that. But the other thing is, again, is to strip the the whole thing from just being about Bowie and his story to being something more universal. Because again, I think if you like strip the image down to what is really essential, and in my opinion here is the idea of being a little bit scared of your own future. So I think that's why it's not colorful. Also, the colorful Ziggy can sometimes be a little bit kitsch. In not he was purely elegant, but what is becoming popular culture, or people dressing up as, you know, it's a lot of fun, and I'm not denying that. But if you, for example, I used to teach in a language school, and when I asked my students about Bowie, they had this idea of like a kitsch glam thing, and then I showed them a clip of Ziggy, and they said, "Oh my God, it's totally different. It's amazing, it's wonderful." But they had this wrong idea, wrong distorted image, which Bowie even talks about sometimes himself, that people have a sort of distorted idea through the media, through other things, of what he really was about, which is a very sophisticated thing, putting kabuki theater into rock and roll and whatnot, very Lindsay Kemp type thing, and quite intellectual in a way, ambitious in that sense. And then it becomes popularized, sometimes good, in a good way, but sometimes also in a way that is so simplified. So I wanted to strip the Ziggy image of that and make it more for the original elegance and for the meaning, let's say. So that's why.
Let me tell you something else that I thought when I was looking at this painting. You were talking about All Too Fast having to do with fame. I'm looking at it, and the first thing that I noticed is him, and then the second thing is the background, which my immediate thought was that it looks like road stripes, and it just has the broken lines, gives it the feeling of speed, right? So combining but then I'm also looking at it more, and I'm like, what am I actually seeing here? I'm seeing white lines, and I was thinking about his fast lifestyle. This is right before he plunged into drug addiction.
The
contemplative expression on his face, it's like I started thinking of it as he's being tempted by the
lines of coke.
Right.
I hadn't consciously thought of that, but then, you know, often with the Thin White Duke and all the other things, the white lines, they end up meaning that. And I think this was embedded in what I meant. When fame is too fast, then of course, you know, it comes with all that package as well. And you know, and me, I'm not a big fan of that. I've never tried anything at all, like any kind of
neither
thing.
have
I. So I, you know, I know that you know, Bowie didn't always give the, let's say, the best example of that, but I think on the other hand, you know, he was someone who had a very self-reflective attitude. So, you know, he was able to get out of that, or manage that in very you know, clever ways, I think. And if not at all times, but certainly at crucial times, he knew, you know, when to, you know, say stop or change direction. So that is embedded in this. This, the lines and the speed again have always for me an art history reference, because I studied art history of art at university with in Italy, and then later on as well a little bit. And so there's always in my mind a framework of references and artists that I loved, and that I would love to come to the USA to see in real life, because I studied the abstract expressionists in quite some detail. And I did study Franz Klein, de Kooning, and Franz Klein in particular, with his white, you know, black and white lines that also are reminiscent of Japanese, you know, it's a sort of American version of Japanese graphics, and kanji characters and stuff. And so the black and white being very expressive itself, that's what it is. You can read a lot into it because it's rich. It's, you know, the absence of colors and all the colors together at once. So I think that you can't get better than that, than black
Yeah.
and white sometimes for me.
Okay, so now we're going to go from black and white to a different color scheme. And
Yeah.
okay, so this one is called This Is Myself.
Yes.
And I want to ask about the title, but before I ask about the title, I'm going to tell you why I pulled this one. So there's a book about the last works of David Bowie by an author named Leah Cardos.
Oh yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually was able to do a written interview with her, and she wrote a book called Black Star Theory, and there's
Yeah.
a page where what she does is what she called a Jungian thought experiment, where she just free associated the color blue, and in the process of doing so, she points out how many times Bowie mentions the color blue. Blue
Yes.
is the color of my room, right? In Sound and Vision.
Yes,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
many songs. Her eyes were blue, but nobody's home, or even
A Silly Boy Blue, even.
right, Silly Boy
Silly
Blue,
Boy
or
Blue.
it's
Yeah.
as far as late as Lazarus
Yes.
talks about the bluebird, right, as freedom.
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely. Yeah. Very
and
much so.
this
Yeah.
is Bowie in blue. And
Yes.
right. So what tell us, well, so I'll ask you two questions and I'll stop talking. So this is of all the paintings I've seen of yours, this is the only one like this, where it's really
Yes.
heavily
Yes.
blue, where it is really focused on the color blue. And it
Absolutely.
was that a deliberate connection to Bowie's use of the color blue, and also the title, This Is Myself? That's a really
Yeah.
intriguing title. So tell us about those two features.
Yeah. So there's a reason why this is different. First of all, it's a technical reason. This is acrylic, which is a medium that I don't get on with at all.
Yeah.
I was trying to learn it. I was trying to tame it in this painting. So this is not gouache. Gouache is very lovely, is really lovely and soft, and I can manage it and I can make it do what I want. But acrylic tends to do what it wants with
Yeah.
me, at least. I mean, I'm totally unable to tame it. So I wanted to I wanted to use that fact to create a more expressionist painting, freer in terms of details that would take maybe less time, but would have more spontaneity to it. And I saw an image, again, a very grainy kind of image, and I thought that might inspire me. I have, apart from the Man Who Fell to Earth, I really love the Elephant Man.
Yeah.
And I even tried, as I was saying earlier, to do a little play, a version of the play with my students when I had the language school. And the scene that we were rehearsing, that was the best scene, was where she says to the actress who comes, Mrs. Kendall, who comes to visit him, she said, "Oh, so you show yourself for a living as well, you display yourself for a living as well?" And she said, "Oh, no, Mr. Merrick, this is not myself, this is an illusion." And then he says, "Well, this is myself too." Yeah. So in other words, the illusion is your truest self. Sometimes, when you are on stage with a character or a mask, you're actually expressing more of yourself, not less.
Yeah. Wow.
You are allowed to do and say things that you're not allowed to do when you're yourself. and those things are absolutely true things that you might be saying. So so this is all about that. So This Is Myself is basically about the fact that Bowie, by playing roles, he actually revealed a lot about himself and his own soul and his own thoughts, in my opinion. The blueness of it is about that there is a certain sadness or a certain sort of thoughtfulness about him, or that, a certain gravitas, if you like, something like that. So it's an introspective painting. He's in his own thoughts, not looking at anything, he's looking inside. And so there is the blue is not only because that was the color I had available in my very limited acrylic palette, but
Oh,
it's actually, it was chosen because of that association.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and the, you know, the other colors that went with it. I think
Okay.
that's what this one was. Yeah, so I really like this one and the way it came out.
So Sarah, I could spend an hour on each of these, but um, I want to show more. So I mean, this one is called "An Occasional Dream,"
Yeah,
which is the name of a Bowie song from around this era of his life in
yeah,
1969. And this is of the ones that we've shown so far, this is, I think, maybe the most colorful one.
yes, yes.
And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to ask a question that I've wanted to ask about each of these paintings, but I think this is the best example.
Hmm.
The eyes. I've
Oh
always,
yeah.
heard and thought, and my own amateur poor attempts at artwork, thought that the eyes are the hardest part of the human anatomy to paint or to draw. And
Hmm.
you get them so perfectly that I've thought that if you painted those eyes on a square, you would know it was David Bowie because they're
Right.
that
Yeah.
bright. So how do you do that? I mean, is that the hardest part? Is that the part
um
that the make or break part of
no,
the painting?
for me the hardest part is the details that are not part of the face,
Okay.
because I don't find them themselves that interesting. His face
Yeah.
I find infinitely interesting, so I could spend hours, first of all, looking at pictures and pictures and pictures of Bowie, and his, you know, enlarging it, studying it in every fleck. You know, for me it's really interesting. Like the anatomy of his mouth is particularly interesting as well. Like, you know, he's got like some little lines here, he's got like a little rim here on top of his lip that always, it's like a double lip, almost like it's whiter. It's it's very so I could spend hours on his face, because his face is where, you know, and the eyes of course are the window to the soul, they say. So for me, if it's where I always start the painting, I always start the painting from the eyes. If I catch the eyes, the likelihood of it is the rest will come out okay.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
when the eyes don't come out good, I discard it. I was planning to do a little class with a friend of mine runs a lovely B&B on the English coast in Kent, and it's all Bowie themed, and it's really quite an exceptional place. It's Art Deco, the rest of it, but there's a Bowie room and all of that, and a bunch of people gets together, and I was going to do a class trying to paint Bowie's eyes. So Bowie's eyes are very interesting. If you observe it, they have a shape like no other person's eyes. You
Yeah.
know, they're not exactly hooded eyes, but they've got like a thing. How to describe it? They are not. They go down a little bit there, and then they go in like that. So I kind of studied the shape of his eyes in fine detail, not only because it pleases me to look at them, but because, you know, they are important to catch his expression, which was unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the eyes here, it's that sort of thing that you'd learn from looking at the Mona Lisa or any Leonardo paintings. Or the I was told, if the painting looks at you, of course you interact with it, you engage with it, you connect with it. So here he's looking at you from the painting, he's looking straight at the viewer.
I feel
So
like if this was on my wall, I would be staring into his eyes,
yeah,
and
yeah,
maybe more than the other paintings we've seen. Well, like the first one we saw, where we talked about how his body fades into the background. That's not the case here, but I feel like I'd be locking eyes with him.
yeah. And I had a friend who bought a painting up in Ireland, and he said he's always looking at me. He's following me.
Yeah,
It's like every time I pass the room, I have to glance over. Yeah. So I think this one is as that quality. This one, as is well, it's got various things that are interesting about it. I think the person who bought it had a very good eye. I feel. So basically it comes from an image from that time, but the image is he in the background is got it behind roses. I think it's Paddington Gardens or something like that. He's got lots of rose bushes behind him, and it's quite distracting. So, and this shirt is very colorful. So it's a very colorful image. Again, I kind of delete a bit of the background, but I wanted to create again something that had dynamic, and I didn't really know how to do that. And I wanted the light, a light effect, because for me, the Bowie of 1969 has got something a bit purer perhaps than other periods, and I really like it. It's my first album, the first Bowie album that I bought and listened to like on repeat. So
Yeah.
for me, Space Oddity is special, and it's quite light, although maybe in its themes is not, but there's an innocence there, and so I wanted to have that, and I didn't know how to do it because the detail of the background was so fine. So I used masking liquid. So I painted it all in the same thing that was in the Sheila one, the house paint, and then I put masking liquid where there would be the light areas, and the rest I just dragged the brush this way to create a movement, as if everything behind him was moving and passing by, and he's just staring at you right in the eyes. So I think that's
along those lines. I wanted to ask about your use of the black line tracing his body, which is not the first thing. I'm just speaking of my own experience with this piece. It's not the first thing that I noticed, but once I did notice it, it really jumped out at me as separating him from his background.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So this one is something you learn from pop art generally, and in the Bowie community, there's another painter called Mark Wardell. I don't know if you've heard of him. Yes. He made the Bowie masks, and he uses that. So I remember seeing an image of his, as well as the pop art images that use the similar device, and I thought that's really clever and cool. And this painting, before I did that line, was lacking something. Was lacking maybe contrast. And so I needed to tie in the figure with, there's some black in the background where maybe there would have been the trunks of the trees behind. They're just on the top there. So I needed to tie it all in, and it needed again a graphic element or a formal element to do that. And I took a leaf from Mark Wardell, and I told him also that I did, and I did the same, and I think it works well in this painting. So thanks, Mark, for listening. Yeah.
Well, I will have to
credit to him for that great idea. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is another one that is featured prominently on your website.
Yeah.
And this is called Sound and Vision, and it's another one that, at least for me, evokes sleep. And I'm telling you my experience of it, and you could tell me that I'm wrong. But I again, you have this almost photorealistic image of his face, and his hand is sort of fading into the background, and above him is this cascade of color and light that goes from bright to dark, from warm to cool. And to me, again, it sort of evokes sleep. But it's also, as I was looking at this and contemplating it, it also, there's sort of a hint of death.
Yes, I think there is. Yeah.
All right,
there is.
Too much talk. Tell us about this.
No, yeah. So again, this is similar to the other one that was on my website. I think it was the same period for me. And this was done during COVID time, funnily enough, the beginning of COVID time. So it was all when all the things that we were familiar with were not accessible to us, like music and going out and seeing friends, etc. So I was in a kind of rather contemplative thing where people were dying around. I was watching the news from Italy and everything. So I think maybe that definitely is there as an idea. But it's that Hamlet line from Hamlet, to die to sleep, maybe in their sleep, what dreams may come, we don't know. So which is also in Lazarus, actually, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean it to be an image of death as such, but sleep and death have obviously something in common, in the sense that in sleep you release your conscience, and you don't know what happens as a result of that. You dream, and etc., etc. So I think that similarly, the creative act, or the the creative moment, is a moment when you kind of let go. And you're not thinking too much or too consciously, unless you're a conceptual artist, perhaps. But I think it's when you're playing music. I have this experience playing music. You're struggling, you've got stage fright, and it doesn't work. But when you manage to let go, something magical happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's thanks to other people around it, put you at ease. But so the idea of sound and vision is that it's the moment when you are able to let go and let things emerge. And in this sound and vision, it's almost like a stream of consciousness or something like that. We don't know what happens in life or death when all our thoughts, all our life comes. They say people see their life in speed,
Yeah.
at high speed. So there is all of that in it, not necessarily consciously. Paintings are great because things happen while you're doing them, and you think, oh, that's what it might evoke. Or I had also just seen gone to Tate Gallery, and I'd seen some paintings by Gerhard Richter, and I was astonished by the way he managed to create light and dynamic, and a dynamic effect. So I somehow subconsciously, I think, used this
Yeah.
to create a sense of something beyond the here and now. Because when we sleep as well, we dream, and we are not living our normal life. We don't know what all of that is, dreams and inspirations and stuff like that. We don't know. So the same, we don't know what comes in death and how we blend with the rest of the universe. A little aside about this painting, this was unusual because I decided to, and you can't see it here, but to cover it in resin. So when you look at it, it's like a mirror. You see yourself in it. So while you see Bowie, you see your own reflection as well. So
Oh.
it's quite an astonishing piece, like in that I managed to get all the bubbles out of the resin, because you have to put like a
Yeah.
light torch to get the bubbles out of the resin, and I managed to do that pretty well. It looks like a mirror, and it was bought by a wonderful lady called Debbie Pagel, who unfortunately passed away. So I sometimes think about the connection between this painting and her, and yeah, it's kind of a bit heartbreaking, and but she loved it. So yeah, it was her painting.
It's
So I
beautiful.
wonder where it is now and how it's doing. Yeah.
Let me ask
Yeah.
one last
So
question about this painting. I think, I wanted to ask you about the titles of the paintings, because I think the titles sometimes, not just your painting, but any painting, often, for me, frame the way I think about the painting. And I thought about his song, Sound and Vision, which I think of as the greatest song ever about writer's block. He says,
yes.
yeah, I will
Yes.
sit right down waiting for the gift of sound and vision. He's not doing anything. He's
Yeah.
waiting for inspiration.
But
And
it's kind of similar to If It Be Your Will, Leonard Cohen's If It Be Your Will. Like okay,
yeah,
I can sing, or If It Be Your Will, I sing no more. Yeah, it's similar. It's another good one about writer's block.
yeah.
Yeah. But I
Oh,
think this one, initially I thought of calling it The Speed of Life, but The Speed of Life is another painting of mine in black and white,
yeah,
which has that similar movement. And so I couldn't call it that. And I was struggling for the title for some time, until when one day I was listening to Low, which is my favorite album. And because of the color there, and the fact that, like I said, creation, and that moment is when you actually are able to let go, and something comes to you which is a bit what Sound and Vision is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought it would be that, and I imagine Bowie writing low, looking like this, maybe because of the cover of the album.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't look anything like this. He had probably short hair when he was recording it, but in my head, it looks like Tommy.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's
Well,
why it's called Sound.
we're gonna do one more, which is I saved my favorite
Cool.
for last, and
Ah.
you won't believe it, but we've been talking for an hour, Sarah.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that went quickly. Oh my God.
So I wanted to close with the one. I mean, you have so many wonderful, beautiful paintings that I like, and it's hard to pick a favorite. But for whatever reason, I like this one the most, and it's called "Waiting for Jimmy." And not everybody necessarily knows who Jimmy is. So who is Jimmy?
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So this is, yeah, it's, I have to say this is also one of my favorites, especially of the latest ones. It inspired a whole series of other ones similar to that. So Waiting for Jimmy is, I was always fascinated by the Berlin period, not
Yeah.
only from a musical perspective, Heroes being my favorite song, as they might have heard in the interview, in the written interview, but generally the idea of being in another city, which I experienced, of course, living in London, and finding myself trying to sort of restart, reinvent yourself, or leave some stuff behind. In a new city. And companion of adventures for Bowie was of course, Iggy Pop, who is the Jimmy in question. Yeah.
His real name.
Yeah, it's real name. Yeah. Ostenberg is the surname. so yeah, so people, and I like the fact sometimes I like to things that are not too obvious, so those who would know that it's Iggy's real name, then they would recognize what it's about. So in my mind, the Berlin period is kind of mythical in my head, and I imagine that these friends, or two people anyway, two artists that are in this city, and maybe Iggy's gone to do something and go to a punk club, or God knows what, is got drunk somewhere, and and I imagine them just about to go out and explore the city, maybe go to Café de Paris, where they used to, not Café de Paris, Paris Cafe is called, a restaurant, or one of their favorite hangouts there, the Jungle nightclub. One of these places, and he's just there while he's waiting for Iggy to arrive, and he's probably going to be really late. In my mind, it's just my own narrative. He's there again, immersed in his own thoughts, and watching the city, and absorbing the vibes of the German capital, and getting inspired. The background could be any city, it could be New York City, it could be anywhere. It's an urban nightscape with lights and bokeh, which is a chance to put some really cool colors and make them dance together. So the colors are dancing together, creating a sort of music or background. They are supposed to be a bit blurry, so it creates a sense of movement. It was inspired by an American painter called Casey Ball. I don't know if you know him. He did some very cool cityscapes and also charcoals. He's one of my, say, the people I've learned from the most recently. Is an amazing artist overall. So he did something like that, and I thought, wow, what a cool thing, and I can use it for my own narrative of Bowie and Iggy in Berlin. So this is an image, just created like that to illustrate what I imagine their adventure and experience would be. And the Berlin that Bowie's talking about, or maybe is where he's immersed here, is not necessarily the real Berlin, but the Berlin of the mind. In other words, the place where you're at home, the place that you return to when you want to be in a good place, in a comfortable place, when he was at the height of his artistic powers, perhaps, and finding himself again, as I imagine. So yeah, it would be fun to know what Iggy might think about it.
So part of what I like about it is the color scheme. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at him, at the figure of Bowie, and I know, again, thinking about the title, which sort of frames the way I look at it, and he looks tense. He looks like
Mm,
he's got something on his mind, but he might be consternated. He's holding his body. He's smoking a cigarette.
mm,
His brow is
yeah.
furrowed. What do you think he's thinking about?
Well, I think it's again, the Berlin period is for me, what
Yeah,
I think his concerns here are mostly, well, of course, is the time when he, is trying to ditch the drugs, or at least
yeah,
reduce them, and maybe get. So I think that is partly it. But I think it's when you're in a new city, you're always a little bit on edge.
yeah,
you're
yeah,
you don't belong there initially. Then it might get under your skin, and it becomes you. And Bowie said Berlin is in his DNA, but it's an adventure, it's a new thing. So also Iggy might not turn up as usual. So maybe,
yeah,
yeah, that's the other thing. So, and I think that in this period he is quite serious. It's a serious Bowie. It's not the nice, it's not the relaxed Bowie we see, let's say, on the reality tour or something like that. Takes himself very seriously as an intellectual. So I think his concerns are intellectual concerns here. Maybe he's thinking, about, yeah, like, how can I create my new musical language? How can I encapsulate this era in a song, or something like that? So intellectual concerns, I would
yeah,
think. Maybe in this period he's also concerned about something that we are experiencing now, which is, when machines kind of take over. I don't know if you've ever seen that little clip of Bowie talking about technology, and how it's changing, and that we're using technology. Probably he was talking about the synthesizer or
yes, yes,
musical stuff, yeah, but something that we don't know how it works. So we are
right,
not able to master it completely. It masters us, and it goes on that curve very, very fast, and we lose control of it. And so I think it's quite a modern idea. We could
yeah.
use it nowadays when we're talking about AI or all that. But he, was always quite present, with this kind of stuff. So he had his finger on the pulse. So yeah, so that's Waiting for Jimmy. So it's kind of wistful Berlin thing, and about his friendship with Iggy, basically. I think
Well,
that's
it's
it
beautiful,
celebrates
and
that.
yeah, I really that there's so many that I like, but that one I think is my favorite. And so this has been, Sarah. This has been wonderful, and
Oh, John, yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing talking to you, and your insights as well. I think you really are very observant, and you know, I think you even kind of got really under the skin of the painting, which is really it's really special. Yeah, really nice. I enjoyed that
I
very much.
appreciate them greatly, and I'll say for anybody who's watching, because six is not enough, right? Six, we looked at six paintings, and it's not enough. For anybody who's watching, if you want more, the good news is there's many on Sarah's website, which is the Captain's Art, and I'll put a link to it here where you could see more of Sarah's art, and you could also purchase some of Sarah's art. And you might want to do it because there's a lot of beautiful paintings, and as many paintings as there are of Bowie, there's paintings of additional subjects as well. And I'll just repeat one thing that was from the written interview. You could paint any random person, and you're so talented, and your fluidity with color and with line is so great. You can make any painting of anybody beautiful. So the
Oh,
Bowie is the
thank you.
hook,
I
right?
hope.
But once you get the hook, I mean, look at the totality of what Sarah paints, because it's really worth spending some time with. So, Sarah, this has been wonderful. It's been delightful. It's really been a joy talking with you and getting to know your art. So, thank you very much. Any last words?
Thank you, John. And yeah, just there's gonna be more paintings released soon for the around the Bowie convention time. So yeah, there's more to see. And what I want to add is thank you, John, for this, and keep going with this blog, because I think it's really cool and amazing. And it's a great adventure to follow Bowie, and we don't know where it leads us, but it's always fun.
Yeah.
That's for
I
sure.
I will
Yeah.
keep going with the blog, and Sarah, I'm glad we got to meet, and we'll stay in touch.
And the last thing,
Yeah,
sorry, John, Yeah, let's make that American show happen.
Yes, yes. That's now my mission, to bring you to the United States for a show, because I think there'd be an enormous amount of interest if we could make that happen. I've
Oh,
never done that
brilliant.
before, but let's figure it out.
You never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Sara.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, ciao. Bye-bye.